I'm the first one to go to therapy, I think, in my family. First one to go to therapy in general, like first man in my family probably ever to ever do anything like that. Plus growing up Latino is like not normal whatsoever. Like, you tell anyone you're doing therapy, they think you're like going to the loony bin or something. Like, oh, you're crazy, obviously, or you ask your parents, what did I do wrong? Oh my God, did I break you or something? And I'm like, oh God, now it's about you. Now it's your therapy session. You're talking to me. But no, it's really cool to hear that. It's like it's necessary and beautiful to kind of check in with yourself and to see what relationships you're in, what actions you're taking, and is that getting in the way of something that you would want, or that is ideal or really true to you. And that's where you popped up in my life and really helped me to do that. And I carry on that radical honesty now more than ever. Especially with love and dating and everything else. Because I love that you said that fear of intimacy. That's definitely something, like definitely back then was something that I did, was like, well, I'll just jump ship and I won't ever really like invest in this because I'll keep jumping ship because out of just fear. So that's something that's definitely worth bringing up. So I appreciate you helping me navigate that and normalizing this radical honesty. And all these ladies are saying, yes, more radical honest men. Yes, please. Let's normalize this to the masses. Just tell me if you just want to hook up with me or you actually want a relationship, please. So that's fantastic. Thank you for bringing that up. You also focus on like trauma, like working with people going through trauma. And that is interesting in terms of like, some people process this very differently. Like they could feel like this is something they need to deal with when it happens, or they suppress it for so long and then it may come out even later and then what have you. I'm curious, is like, that could be such like an emotional, like heavy thing that you may not want to address. I'm curious, like, how do you work with people and kind of help them? I'm bringing this back to relationships as well, because this is really hitting on what we're talking about, but how do you like help them like kind of hold their hand through those initial first steps of like opening up and coming into therapy? Like maybe they went to therapy, it's a huge one, but like, how do you kind of help them kind of unravel that in a way that is not destructive or sustainable, if that makes sense? Like, what are those first initial steps?
Well, first, I wanna say this about, because you mentioned how it's different for everybody. When we experience a traumatic event, if we receive or seek out intervention within the first 6 months, this is based on, what I know from my training and how our nervous system works.
Yeah.
For 6 months, if it gets addressed, it doesn't necessarily get integrated into our nervous system as, we're going to call it big T trauma. So it's not
Okay.
a big deal, right? Why? Because we're processing very early on.
Yeah.
And it may still affect us down the road. It may still be something that comes up and that we still need to work on a little bit more as time goes on. But when we run away from dealing with something traumatic and 6 months go by, a year goes by, and a lot of us, what we do is, something traumatic can really take a toll on us physically. We may lose sleep. We may not feel like eating. We may just want to, or maybe we just want to sleep.
Yeah.
We just want to isolate, right? And so all of that gets in the way of us addressing, processing, and really kind of getting it out of our system. I often use the example of, I have a little dog. So I always use him as an example of like, every time Socrates shakes it off, right? He's holding all this tension and he's just like shakes it off. Like, he's not holding that tension and carrying it with him the rest of the day.
Yeah.
He's shaking it off. He's getting it out of his nervous system. And we need to do that. And when we don't do that, it's like one thing happens and I'm carrying that. And then something else happens and now I'm carrying that. And so it's an accumulation. So then that's where it can get very, very scary to actually go to therapy to address. And it starts creeping in by affecting us in the relationship, right? I get triggered because of something my partner said. I may be irritable because, without realizing that, I'm feeling depressed because of what happened.
Right.
So it manifests in different ways.
The Self-Hype Podcast. The Self-Hype Podcast. Hype Podcast.